On June 30th, 2026, Overwatch released an experimental game mode. 4 creators provided unique and sometimes drastic changes for its hero. Unlike other temporary game modes, this had balance and hero design in mind. Naturally, this begs the question, which changes actually fit in the game? Let's find out as I give my thoughts on every single hero in real time. I think it's really cool that they're allowing the community to have input like this, obviously as a separate mode. And I think it's important to get as much broad perspectives as possible, because as players, we can get very tunneled visions on certain aspects of the characters. And as designers, you might have a macro overview, but you will inherently be at a different perspective than like the average player. So I see the idea of making D.Va more of a selfless character. I understand the aims with that, the goals with that. I just am not sure how much this really changes the average flow of gameplay for her. In a way, it's also a buff to self-destruct, which is arguably kind of an older ultimate, one that doesn't quite fit in with the modern gameplay style. I think making baby D.Va better is not necessarily what I would think about when tweaking the character. At the same time, I'm not really sure how I feel about the character overall, in the sense that I think she's mostly like okay. I think maybe you rein back some of the, I guess, assassin potential, the kill potential. So this is interesting in that you're emphasizing that pilot aspect of her kit more, which I don't think is necessarily bad. I like the idea of being rewarded when Defense Matrix does something, of kind of charging up. I think that's a cool idea. I'm just not sure if improving Baby D.Va and her ultimates is really the way I'd go about changing the character, I think. So I think it's a cool idea. She is, I believe, a harder character to tweak, and we'll see this with some of the other characters that are already in a good place. It's kind of hard to meaningfully change them because you're just adding stuff on top of a good design already. But for the sake of this would definitely be a wait and see for me in general. But I think I'd put it. I kind of see it needs big changes. I'm not in love with the idea. I think there's potential in emphasizing the baby D.Va route a little bit more, but I'm not sure if that is the way to go with the character. So overall, I think it's fine. I think it's kind of interesting, but you can argue, like, for most of her gameplay, like, none of this matters, which I think is the biggest hang-up. I'll split this up. I like the Panopticon change. I think it adds interesting utility to the ability. It can alleviate some of the feels bad man moments when you just whiff completely. I don't think it makes it too oppressive, in the sense that it's still only 200 health. It's an ultimate. Ultimate should be powerful. So I like that change. I like the Panopticon change. I think some minor tweaking and that would work. I really do not like this. I do not. I don't think giving characters who are balanced by being stationary more movement options helps the game. It makes them feel a little bit better to play, obviously, which that is important, but her biggest weakness is that she's immobile. She's tied to wherever she places her barrier, and that is something that could be improved as well. But in general, I think just being like, oh, you can just rocket jump, or you can boost jump, or whatever, that leads to a lot of interesting interactions. But for the health of the game, the fact that she has such strong poke damage and the abilities to really anchor in an area, combined with the easily accessible high ground, like I don't think this is something that it was really needed. I don't really think it's something that improves the character that much. Or I should say, obviously these changes make the characters stronger. That's fine for a goofy patch like this. I think that makes sense. However, in terms of harmony, the health of the overall game, I think that would be pretty bad if you just alleviated one of her major weaknesses like that. I see the vision a little bit. I can understand it. I really like the Panopticon change. I do not like adding that element to the character where I don't think she needs it. And it also, another thing that's, where is she? Let's put her there. I like it a little more than D.Va's, I think. Another reason I don't like it is that it goes against the like fantasy of the character. The whole thing with Domina is how little effort she actually puts into things, how much it's all catered around these machines helping her out and all the hard light, nonsense. And I think making her literally shove against the ground and boost up, I don't really think that fits the overall vibe, the overall fantasy. Again, for goofy mode like this, I think it's fine. I think it's worth poking around at a little bit, but it's not something I'm really interested to see. So I put it there, but the Panopticon change is something that I genuinely quite like. For that reason, it goes there. So they just buffed Doom. Again, all of these are buffs. It's about the idea. It's not necessarily about the power, because all of these characters are more powerful with these add-ons. I like the idea of giving Doom a little bit more to do outside of just the empowered punch, because unfortunately that seems to be just the main driver of his kit, and that makes him a little one-dimensional, which is annoying because I think his potential as like a really expressive high skill ceiling tank is interesting and different from the rest of the roster, and you already see that a little bit, but I don't inherently mind. It's a little bloated. I think you worry about his kit being a little bit too much. I think in isolation, it's not a horrible idea to give him that little bit of upward mobility, that little bit of combo potential. I think the main thing I dislike is you're adding another stun, you're adding a slow, you're adding a knockdown. Crowd control, while necessary to prevent hypermobile characters from just dominating, is inherently a little toxic. Adding that to a tank that can be anywhere and has potential to deal a shit ton of damage, especially with this change, I don't know how I feel about that. I think the core, like a lot of these, I think the core idea of empowering multiple abilities is interesting. That adds another decision for the Doomfist to make. I think inherently adding uppercut, if you tweak the damage, isn't the worst idea to give him another mobility option, another escape option, etc. But I really can't get behind all the crowd control. I do like the idea. I think the core idea of giving him more outplay potential is interesting, and I can see that him filling that niche stronger than he already does. Obviously, it would need to be tweaked, but I think these changes, the core of them, comes from a good place that I can get behind. It feels almost a little less gimmicky. I mean, all of these are gimmicky, but a little less gimmicky than the other ones. So I think that's fine. I'll do strong idea, probably needs to be tweaked. Okay, this is interesting. This is shifting the character to a lot more, like they say, assassin focused, a lot more direct damage focused. I think this idea, the third person kind of lie in wait, I think that's kind of cool a little bit. I think it fits with his style of like this outlaw kind of ruffian, just jumping somebody and taking their lunch money type fantasy. I think that fits pretty well. You could argue it could lead to some scouting, like providing too much information, but people can emote and just hold it in the third person anyways. That's something that's been in the game, and I don't think that's something that's like too oppressive. You could, I think, for future adjustments, maybe make it a timer. It would obviously need some tweaks, but I really like this concept of just lying in wait and then jumping on somebody. And like you could use it to hide and or reset your cooldowns, but at the same time, you're stationary, you're vulnerable, and it's not like he's hard to see or anything. So I think there's enough offsetting that where I think that's actually an interesting little wrinkle and something that makes his wall climb unique. I think, everyone jokes about like Hazard's honorarily Japanese because he's the wall climb, but that would separate it from the other characters in a way that really fits, I think, the overall fantasy. I'm trying to think of like ways it would be too like oppressive, like he like clinging to above like ledges and waiting for someone to go below and you would just drop down. See, that could be annoying, but in a world where Wrecking Ball already exists, I don't think that's like the craziest idea. This is something that I think is legitimately pretty interesting, and that with some tweaks and some refinements could be good. This is like whatever. Downpour can feel frustrating to use just because of how telegraphed it is. I don't know if there's any other tank that has just a raw, just deal damage ultimate. It's like, I guess Hog, kind of, but even he, it's like that barrier. So I think that shifts him away from the identity of a tank a little bit too much. I don't know if his ultimate is even that much of a problem, I'll be honest. So the downpour changes are like whatever, that's fine. But this I really like. This I actually think there's a lot of potential. And I'm not quite in, going back to what we're actually doing, I'm not quite in put it in the game, because I think you'd need to see it to play it out a little bit. But I think the idea is pretty strong. I think it fits with the character. I think it gives you more options. It feels really cool to just hide away in a corner and wait for somebody. So that's something I think would actually be worth looking into, like as a legitimate change. So this is goofy. It does increase her long range pressure, as they said. I really So on the one hand, hitting headshots with Carnage has a lot of potential in terms of how much that would feel good, and the trick shot potential with that. Let me check how much damage Carnage does. Just 150? So 200 damage instantly, plus the bleed. Like that's really toxic. So I see what they're trying to do. You alternate between the weapons. Carnage is a little bit riskier because once it's embedded, it's stuck. You can close the distance. You can approach them in order to get it back, or you could throw it first, then throw the knife, pull it, get your axe back, whatever. I just don't think this fits the flow of the character. I think the massive damage would be so unbelievably aggravating, just 200 instantly by a tank. Oh my goodness. This is, I think, a problem when the character is already pretty well designed, because Queen, in my opinion, is one of the better designed characters in the whole game. So how do you add a wrinkle that improves the flow without just being weird and like mucking it up? So while I think this is goofy, this is fun, I think it would be frustrating to deal with in terms of you just getting a bunch of damage at range. I think it discourages her intended gameplay loop of closing the distance. Obviously, you still have the shotgun and everything, but I'm afraid it would promote people staying in the back and just chucking those two abilities back and forth and not doing anything. I don't know how I feel about this. I'll be honest. They had to do something, obviously. I see the vision, but I don't think it fits the character. I think it would be very frustrating to deal with. On the other side, I think it could promote gameplay that is not what you ideally see Junker Queen being played as. This right here, this is excellent, in my opinion. The biggest problem with Mauga is that damage reduction is inherently uninteresting to deal with, in my opinion. There's not really a way to interact with it. It just reduces the feedback you get from interacting with the game. When you actually use it, when you activate it, it doesn't really feel great either. It's just far too passive. And I think Overdrive in particular is just it's not a nothing burger of an ability. It's important. It can swing fights when used correctly. It's just so, like, it lacks any sort of interesting dynamics beyond timing. It can be frustrating to play against. It has all this stuff that it is very turn off your brain in a way that I don't think is interesting or fun or healthy. It's just kind of whatever. Changing it so it allows you to make different kinds of plays. That little bit of move speed allows you to rush in or find cover or whatever else. That fits the character well. I think making it into just raw healing instead of reduction or lifesteal makes it a little bit more predictable. You'd obviously still have the glow. You'd obviously still know the Mauga has it active, that they can use it, but it makes it more active from the Mauga's perspective, because they have to use it again. They have to always think about, like, do I use it now or do I wait? Do I use it now or do I wait? That adds an interesting dynamic. I don't know. I think this is also the ally thing. It feels like they added that aura just to say, like, he technically has damage reduction. He technically can help his teammates, when it's just it's something most people forget about anyways. So obviously making the duration longer and giving him a flat movement speed buff, that you'd have to monitor that. But I don't know. I think this is like genuinely interesting. It's more interesting than the base game. And again, we're not really talking about balance, because all of these would need to be, everything in the list would need to be tweaked. But I don't know. I think this fits the character. I think it keeps the sustain, because you still have the overhealth generation. I like it. I think this is better than the base game. And then that might be a little much, 250 damage from super high up. At the same time, the fact you have to deliberately, like, set it up, you have to stomp at the right time as you're going over a ledge or whatever, I think it's mostly okay. The inner radius of the stomp already deals 150. Now 250 is a lot. I just talked about how Queen with the axe throw is bad. I think the idea of scaling with height is fun. I think it encourages a little bit of creativity, but at the same time, the base ability is still good. It's still the same. I don't know. I think it genuinely adds another little tweak to the character. It would need toning down for sure, but I think unlike Queen, where it changes the dynamics of how the character plays in a really weird way, I don't think it really changes how Mauga plays. So I don't know. I think I like the overdrive so much, the changes so much, and I think the stomp is genuinely, like, that's a cool little thing. It might be a little too powerful. I fully acknowledge that, but I think the ideas are very strong. Fits the hero identity without changing the character too much. This is something I genuinely think, like, they could experiment with, legitimately. The most boring tank in the game is just a big old damage block. So I think the main thing here is that all of these changes are, like, telling me different things. It's just, so I get the look of making Orisa more mobile because she's a horse, and that is something. This is another character that I genuinely think, I'll put her in Y for now, I genuinely think, like, probably needs a rework. I think they're just super boring. It's you're a brick, you're a damage check. The javelin is cool, but they don't, it feels like they don't do anything with it. So I think Sheep has probably a lot of potential for full-on changes. I don't get this fully. The closest we have to that would be something like, you have the Roadhog perk, and then I guess Zarya bubble, there she is the other thing that, like, directly targets an ally. I'm not a fan of just extra burst healing. From an ability, like, coherency standpoint, it makes no sense. And all of these are dumb and goofy, but just the idea of, I throw a javelin and it deals burst healing. I don't know. That's probably just more nitpicky than anything else, but this is weird. I don't hate it, I guess, but I don't know how I feel about that. The little mini charge is like, fine. I don't know how it would change the character all that much. It just, I mean, it gives you another movement option. I mean, okay, I think this adds extra functionality to Orisa that she really needs. It makes, I already talked about how I think Overdrive is boring and kind of sucks. Fortify is the same, but slightly worse, in my opinion. So giving it an additional functionality that adds some mobility, I think is fine. This is very dumb, but honestly kind of fun. I do wonder how she would play with that change, in terms of you can fly upwards, and that allows you to be more aggressive in terms of the stuff you block, take high ground, all that stuff. So I don't hate it. I think the problem is combining these. I think you would do one and make that like the mobility ability. I think doing both kind of confuses the identity a little bit, especially because she doesn't really have a way to capitalize on it. Her little fusion cannon, whatever, is not really a close range weapon. If you made that more of a shotgun type thing, I guess. I think I'm more confused by these changes collectively than anything else. I think in isolation, I can kind of see it. I just don't really know what the vibe would be with all of these together. She'd be like a mobile support tank. That is something different, I guess. And maybe I'm being too critical on how these fit together. I think individually it's fine. Both of these together don't work. I'll put her in goofy, but no. I don't think they're like useless or inherently broken. I think the little charge is like fine. This is kind of weird. I'm gonna put it up higher, a little higher, because the more I yap about this, the more intrigued I am. The more I think like, man, what would this actually look like? And I think that is emblematic of the potential in the design. At the same time, I don't really know if she needs all of this. So for the moment, I'll put her at the bottom of here where like, maybe, sure, we'll see. Barrier lasts forever. So they made it Sigma Shield, essentially. You put it up, you place it down, you put it up, you place it down. I think that this is just like quality of life. I'm generally against more crowd control, but it makes it so it's a little bit snappier. I think that's fine. Making it more like Sigma Shield is interesting in that I think Sigma Shield is probably the best designed shield in the game. I think you would need to reduce the health if you're going to do something like this, or make it smaller or something. I think the idea of this is interesting because right now it's in a strange place where it's strong enough that it essentially can't be broken in the time it lasts. So it's just like an infinite health barrier for the time it lasts, but it doesn't last long enough for you to like meaningfully take space with it. It's very strange. It doesn't feel great. Something like this is interesting. I like the idea of it. I just kind of wonder how it would work. I think if it works like Sigma's, I think that would be fine. I'm just a little bit worried that you would be able to spam it a little bit too much. Although maybe that's not as big of a problem as I'm making it out to be. And then this reduce damage, but now life steals. You make him more of a nuisance. It's more of a self-preservation ult. I can kind of see it. That might be annoying, but at the same time, it doesn't last forever anyways. So I think that's an interesting place to take it, especially since anti-heal would stop it, any stuns would still stop it. I don't mind that idea of just making it really hard to deal with him specifically, instead of making the area of effect dangerous. I don't think that's a bad idea inherently. A lot of these are like interesting quality of life, like little tweaks that make him a little bit more distinct. Well, the annihilation change makes him a little more distinct. I think this is just quality of life. This I like the idea of a lot, but I'm a little worried it could be abused. Overall though, I think conceptually it makes a lot of sense. I think it would make Ram feel a little bit better to play. I'm probably gonna put it up here. I like it more than the baby diva buffs. I like it more than giving Domina a jump. I like it. I'm just a little concerned. It would be up here if I knew how the barrier worked, specifically how that interaction would go. I'm probably gonna play it a little bit just to see. I don't necessarily hate emphasizing the WM1 just running, swinging. The barrier health, it's a little less sustainable, a little less focused on the barrier. The barrier is more used for self-preservation. I don't know if this makes him more balanced. You still wonder how he's going to be able to take up space, although the changes they gave to Fire Strike do make him a little bit stronger recently. But even besides that, I think design-wise, you emphasize more of the aggression. You reward Rhines who get in and kind of go all or nothing a little bit, which has always been something about the character that I think appeals to a lot of people. I don't hate these in concept. I think both of these together are actually like kind of interesting. I think this would give Rhine that unique flavor as like the melee brawl, run in the middle, wreak havoc tank. I don't know if that would make him too oppressive. I guess the idea is that as he gets lower, obviously there's a greater risk to him just popping to just dying. So, okay, yeah, I don't mind that. This is like a meme. I don't really care either way about that. It could be funny in certain circumstance, but I don't think it makes him better in any real notable way. I think in general, I do wonder how oppressive he would be, but I like the feel, just the vibes of these changes for Rein. I think it fits the character well. It encourages more aggression in a way that the other tanks don't really have. Like that kind of berserker passive, the way it works, doesn't really work on any other tank like it would Rein. So I think that is a positive. I think that's good in terms of making these characters interesting and unique. Missed opportunity to, well, you can't rework the character necessarily. I think this is funny. I think it adds another decision for Hog. Do you want to use Hook aggressively to try to get a pick early, or do you want to save it to protect somebody? This is like whatever. That kind of makes him just more toxic to deal with. These are both changes that are like whatever. They almost feel more like memes. Although Hog in particular is a character that needs like a complete, just fundamental overhaul. He's incredibly toxic in the worst ways. This is not something that could really be fixed by a patch like this. I think using the Hook as a mobility tool is kind of interesting, but I'm not sure how I feel about the rest of it. Making it poisonous gas is just like another damage option. It's whatever. I just wonder, like, when would you ever... I guess when you're running away, you would use it as like a little fuck you to whoever's chasing you. I think giving Hog more mobility is interesting. I just don't really... I don't really vibe with these. Okay, so this is another example, similar to Queen, where the normal character is so interesting and so well made that whatever changes are going to feel a little bit weird. This has potential to be really fun. You can get a little more aggressive, you can play make a little bit with it, but it also goes back to my previous statement about Domina. One of Sigma's weaknesses is his lack of mobility. Just giving him a mobility option on cooldown, I don't know how I feel about that. Obviously, he has the perk that allows him to hover, but that's a little narrower in use case, excuse me, and because it's so slow, the ability to just fly around as a tank is something that needs to be handled very carefully. So I like this idea, though, of Kinetic Grasp having one more little layer. This I just like. This should maybe be base kit. I think this is interesting. It rewards you for being aggressive with accretion. I think that's fine. It makes it a little easier to punish enemies who are super far away, but you have to put yourself out of position, and you waste one of your better abilities, so I think it's fine. And this is just like, let's make Flux worse. One of the coolest ultimates in the game, you make a little bit weirder. They really want Sigma to fly. Like, it fits the character. I understand they're going for the theme, they're going for some flavor, which is always a little bit nice. But outside of this, the other two I'm a little more skeptical on. I think giving Sigma free flight in general is a slippery slope, especially with how much damage he can do. The fact he can constantly shield himself. The hover is already, I think, enough. And it's very slight. It's just a slight little boost that he gets. I'm probably going to put him here. I only really like one of the changes, and the change is so minor that it's like whatever. But I see the vision. It's not quite Y tier. Alright, this is put in the game. It's more skill expression. That's not too powerful because of the limited effectiveness. It's still on the normal jump cooldown. The barrier can work like it has previously if you use it correctly, but you can also use it to shield teammates. You can throw it a little bit away from you and progress towards that area. You can isolate specific targets with the barrier. I don't know, man. I think this... The distance you have to be a little wary of how far he can be. But again, that's offset by his limited range and the fact that he's so dependent on the barrier to protect himself. I don't even think it's like that big a deal. Like, these changes, you could genuinely add to the base character, and I think you'd still keep the core of what makes the character good and interesting and excellent, and add just a little bit more mastery potential, a little bit more complexity. He's already, it's similar to Queen and Sigma, where Winston, in my opinion, one of the best designed tanks in the game, but I think this is just little things that don't dramatically change how the character works that can just add that little bit more of expression. Just like going around corners and all this stuff. Oh, this is the good stuff right here, I think. Probably my favorite changes so far. Okay, so the justification, you want Ball to be a little more team-centric. Okay, so very subtle changes, which I like. I like when it's a little more understated. Detonating mines after 2 seconds is like, whatever. That feels like a fine quality of life thing. You can also, teammates who are trying to avoid it, or rather enemies who are trying to avoid it, you can catch them a little bit. It adds some added pressure. Mines are pretty annoying to deal with anyways. You still have the 2-second window to get out of there. I don't think it's the worst. This is like, eh. I think Claw attaching to the ground, it sounds very simple. The ramifications would have to be explored extensively just because of how much insane tech that would allow. It would make him easier, I think, in that you can get up to speed faster, but that's not really that much of a problem if you know what you're doing. I don't know. I think just more options are good. Unless there's some crazy, horrible tech you can do with that just wrecks somebody else. I like that. And this, by ability damage. So the slam or the fireball revealed to who he's targeting. I don't hate that idea. It's not a problem if you're communicating, but on a casual level or with people who don't want to communicate, I can see it. All of these are very subtle. I think this smooths out the experience a little bit, but I don't know if it helps the core problem of Ball being so independent that it feels like he's doing nothing for you when he's your tank at times. You are able to see who he's pressuring a little bit, so you are able to see that impact a little bit more. I can see how that would be interesting. I can see how that would be appealing. I'm still a little... But none of these changes are like red flags to me. I think they're all like of the right mindset. I don't want to just agree with everything, but I think these are like in the stronger idea category. I think making Ball's usage a little bit more transparent to people. The mine detonation makes it a little less feast or famine. There's a little bit more of a timer, or juking people, I guess. This is the one I'd be most worried about, but again, most Wrecking Balls can already maintain speeds, no problem. I think for the most part it's fine just off the top of my head, but I'd need to see it a little bit. But nothing there in there is as confusing or weird as some of the changes below. Allies with barriers can now jump higher. Some utility, that's interesting. These are just buffs, like this is just a buff. All of these are buffs, but this doesn't really change how the character plays at all. Like I guess, I don't think Grav really needs that much help. Maybe I'm, too unskilled or whatever, but I don't think Grav is like horrible. I understand that this applies with the whole black hole fantasy. You're getting sucked into this unbelievable force and you only have so much time to avoid it, but I like this of supporting the teammates, less mobile teammates more. I have like no opinions on this. This is almost a nothing burger to me. It doesn't change how Zarya plays. It's not really that interesting. Like compared to some of the stuff these guys got, like this changes how Sigma plays pretty substantially. This changes how Ram plays. This is an overhaul basically, and Zarya's just like, yeah, you can jump higher. And that's most ultimate changes I don't really care about too much because of how rarely they come up, and it's probably just feel. I'm just rambling, I'm talking nonsense. It's not why, like it makes sense you want her to have a little bit of utility that could enable some plays that makes her a little less selfish. I don't think it needs big changes. I don't think it's like a strong idea either, though. I'm gonna create a new tier for Zarya specifically that we will see if other people end up in there. These changes, like the impact feels so unsubstantial that I'm just gonna put it here. Like this feels like nothing. This doesn't change the character like at all. I don't think any of the other tanks have that problem. I guess Hog. Well, no, this changes how Hog plays a good amount. But the rest of these have more going on. Maybe D.Va, but I think changing baby form that much is a real, effort in her gameplay. Yeah, I'm gonna put her there. This is a nothing burger. This is like whatever. Like sure, you needed to fill out the patch notes. You did that. I understand the concept of these in terms of making her more useful at longer ranges, giving her more options to escape. None of them are bad. None of them stand out to me. I just worried that they're gonna make her feel a little bit too much like Tracer, especially with the backwards movement. I think the movement abilities for flankers in particular are really important in terms of defining their playstyle. And Anran's being a very singular direction boost, kind of like a little hover jets almost, for lack of better description, adds to that uniqueness in her kit. I always interpreted her playstyle as like leaning more towards sustained and slightly longer fights. You have that with the dance ability that heals ever so slightly. I still think these changes are in the right place. I think making her the fastest hero in the game, that feels a little strange to me. I don't know why you would do that. I think keeping her with a Genji Tracer speed is fine. I don't really have strong opinions about this in particular. It's mostly quality of life stuff, but the dash changes, I don't really jive with them personally. I think they make her too similar to other flanking characters. But overall, I mean, I think this is another nothing burger in the sense that they're so, at least in my head, they're so minor and specific that I don't see it meaningfully changing how Anrans interact with their targets or how enemies interact with them. It's just slight tweaks that I think are fine, but I don't really know if they're needed. It's almost like change for the sake of change. Dynamite sticks to surfaces, fuse timer increased, so you have to shoot it now. When Bob is killed, explodes. Okay, that's like whatever. I've made my opinion on ultimate changes known. I think this is a gimmick. I think Bob is a fine zoning tool that when used correctly can still be dangerous, that has counterplay. Like the counterplay to Bob by adding a D.Va nuke to it is just like, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how much I like that it overlaps with D.Va nuke. You're making these ultimates too similar in my opinion. This change I'm not a fan of personally. Sticking dynamite to surfaces is interesting, making her more of a tactical kind of planned out character, setting up traps in that way. I do like the concept of that. I just think it could feel really bad if you like throw it at the ground or in the middle of a crowd and you don't quite hit it on the first shot. It's just like, it's like dead in the water for those 20 seconds. Like even if you get it back on cooldown, that dynamite that you didn't shoot is not going to do anything. Now, obviously, the original design is like that as well, where it has a long fuse timer. It's hard to work without shooting it, but making it to 20 seconds means that it's essentially impossible to use as just like a fire and forget grenade. This is another example of a well-designed character, and they're just trying to add layers to her. I weirdly think, like, as a perk, this wouldn't be terrible. maybe with like slightly increased damage or something to offset it. But as a base kit change, I just think it messes with the flow a little bit too much. Nothing drastic. This doesn't ruin the character. It does add that craftiness. You lose the craftiness. Excuse me. You lose the sharpshooter fantasy of like sniping it in midair and getting a big dynamite and damaging everyone, and instead get the fantasy of, oh, you stick it to surfaces and you plan and you wait and you shoot it when people pass by. I just don't know. Like, it adds an interesting extra layer. It's just like another thing the ability can do. I don't know if increasing the fuse timer, by doing that you raise the skill floor of the ability to get use out of it. I don't know how I feel about that. It's kind of whatever. I see the potential. This is definitely one that you need to really feel, that some people would really like and some people really wouldn't. I think overall, though, I don't want to use this category too much. I'm going to put this in nothing burger. I don't like the bob change. Let me change this to light blue. I don't like the bob change. I think the dynamite change is kind of interesting, but it just adds another layer of functionality. Like this is not a problem. This is just like, we needed to add extra functionality. So you just added another thing for the ability, which is nice, I guess, but I don't know. I don't think it's terribly interesting or solves like any of the problems with the character. I think as a perk, it's fine, but not base kit. So they brought his old ult back. They brought tank form back, and they added this perk instead. Now, artillery is a weird ultimate in that it's bad. It's really bad. I think a lot of people like the tank. This is essentially asking, does adding the tank form back as his ultimate, is that worth the offset of removing that as a major perk, which I think most people would agree is one of the more interesting major perks in the game. This one is like still good, but I think a little less interesting to toy with. I think it's fine. I think overall it's fine. I think overall it leans positive. I prefer the tank to the artillery ultimate. I think it's more fun to use. I don't think this addresses anything about the character. Yeah, from a design perspective, it's like, I'd probably do strong idea tweak, mainly because I can't really think of anything to like gripe, to complain about. I think it's mostly like, okay, if they brought the tank back and gave him another major perk, I don't think too many people would complain. I don't think tank was like that oppressive about Bastion. It was all the other toxic parts of his kit. And artillery is just an ult that is very underwhelming to use. So I think that's mostly fine. The reason why I'm not at put in the game is because it doesn't, to me, change anything about the character in a way that makes me like super excited. It doesn't change any problems with the character or add really interesting new tools or whatever. I think you'd need to see how people respond to tank form again. So I guess I'll put in strong idea tweak. You could argue nothing burger, but I think there's enough there. Ultimate perks are bad and should not be in the game. A perk that changes how things interact with the ultimate, that you cannot tell if the Cassidy has it, is horrific, is terrible, because you as the player, as the team facing the Cass, are not going to know if a shield can block the Deadeye until it's used. So this is really bad. You're not going to know until the Cass uses it once. And by the time he uses it once, that is an interaction you've already lost. Potentially one that could heavily impact the rest of the round. You could spam the scoreboard and constantly check if they pick this perk all the time, but that is so exhausting. That adds more cognitive load to the player. That doesn't really fit with the rest of the game. Yeah, you can check what perks they're running otherwise just to get a feel, but something this significant that changes this much, I think it's going to be a skill check for so many people. I think it's going to be frustrating for so many people. I know Deadeye is bad. It's a very outdated ultimate. This is not the way. This is frustrating. This is confusing for a lot of people. And it's hard to balance because it's an ultimate perk that's also a minor perk. So this is, I don't like this at all in any capacity. Granting invincibility during combat roll, you give him some tech ability. I get the Dark Souls reference, haha, it's very funny. You just make him harder to kill. This seems fine initially. I kind of like the idea of giving combat roll extra usage beyond just reloading. However, invincibility on a 5-second cooldown that can be reduced if the cast hits headshots. That is absurd. That is so strong, especially if the Cassidy is good and can hit their shots consistently. It makes the character so much harder to punish. And you combine that with the hinder, it becomes a really annoying, stally, just thorn in a team's side for a long time. I think it's fun. I like some of the tech you can do with it. It would be horrific to play against, just constantly dealing with that. And maybe I'm making too much out of it, but everyone complains about Suzu and the invincibility Suzu gives, or immortality field. A high damage DPS getting that every few seconds doesn't have the health pool of Tracer. Oh my god. And then finally, this is also horrible. Permanent buffs for the whole round. That makes the character less predictable. That discourages you from swapping off the character, which if Overwatch is still designed where certain characters are meant to counter other ones and you're supposed to have some flexibility, you get rid of that, you discourage that. Why? It's a 6-shooter. It has a revolver. Oh my god. Okay, this is just a total meme. This is the first one I'm putting in Y. None of these really address anything that Cass struggles with in a healthy way. This is a weird buff to Deadeye that adds inconsistency. This makes him super frustrating to punish. And this is, completely goes against all the other rules established in the game for the sake of a weird ammo buff that takes away one of the negatives of the character and goes against the fantasy of having a revolver. This one is horrible. As meme changes, I think this especially is funny. If we're trying to make this and treat this as a semi-serious, this is what I would change, this is awful. Because this is a legitimate, the Anran changes are here are the problems with Anran, here's my opinions on how to fix her. But yeah, I can't get behind these cast changes. Changing focusing beam to secondary fire. The pros and cons of this is that you'd be able to weave it into your natural shooting and abilities more often, more back and forth. Adding a resource meter obviously adds another layer of resource management instead of just cooldown management. It allows for it to be a more consistent part of her kit, but you get less value out of a single use, you could argue. I do agree that beam being on cooldown feels a little strange, especially since it's almost exclusively used to finish off low health targets. There's not really any other use for it. I can see it. I see the vision there. And I like the idea that you would only need to use it a little bit. because there is some clunkiness of using it in its current state on cooldown, and you only need like some of it and it's still out there, and you either can't like try to cancel it early, or you're just using an ineffective ability. Obviously, I think you'd need to tweak how fast the resource drains, and maybe the cooldown, make it like 2 seconds or whatever. But in concept, I kind of get this. It goes a little bit against of Echo being like an all at once and then go back and then all at once character. But I think improving the flow of just going back and forth, especially to like even in her design, very fluid, very streamlined visual design, I should say. So I don't mind this. I think there's some potential there. I think it's interesting. This is just a flat buff to sticky bombs. They're easier to hit. 5 seconds feels a little bit much. And again, I know this isn't supposed to be balancing, but I don't know how I feel about the sticky bomb buffs. I think making it easier to hit is bad. That makes the character a little bit easier. I think part of the appeal of Echo is how all or nothing these are. They're revealing it to you afterwards. That fits with the character, that fits with her passive as well. But I think these changes don't... I'm not feeling these. I think they undermine kind of the skill floor of sticky bombs, which I'm not saying it's like an unbelievably hard ability to use, but I think just making them faster and easier, and the fact they already deal so much damage, you then get this extra bonus. I think that puts like too much power in that ability. That already is probably the most important part of her kit, I guess, after her flight. Buffing duplicate. I understand the method of you want to give incentive to do other things that's not just a tank or a DPS. So I can see it. I still think the base ultimate is so interesting that this just feels like, let's just make it even better. The fact that it's already a second health bar, it's already adaptable to like what you need at the moment. But I see the vision of promoting some more creativity, at least initially. I'm just worried that this will, like Illari, if the other team has an Illari, then you're just like, oh, I'm just going to copy Illari and I get the 20% more damage and I can build ult faster and then get the sunburst and team wipe or whatever. And you say you don't want to promote picking tank, and you add a speed boost tank. So if it's like a Rein or something, that's just more incentive to pick them. So I get the intent with the duplicate changes. I don't really think they, at least just reading, I don't really pull it off, but I can see like why one would do that. I kind of see it needs big changes. I don't think it's fully goofy. I don't think it's full. I don't have unbelievable questions, especially because I like the focusing beam changes. I think there's something there about improving the back and forth of her kit. But the sticky bombs are whatever. I don't think this works. And duplicate is like, I think it's fine. But I can see how these could be really good. So you do burst, unburst, burst, unburst. I like that you're promoting that flow. It's a lot of damage. I think design-wise, though, promoting the back and forth isn't too bad. It's like, that's fine, I guess. I don't like this. I dislike any ability. Rewarding final blows has to be done carefully, because a lot of the time it feels like they don't provide much of a reward because you've already killed whoever you're attacking. That's why I don't really like the reload perk, or passive rather, where if you eliminate an enemy, you reload faster. Like, it's fine, but it's such a small percentage of the actual game. Though the exception is, I think Genji's Slash does it really, really well, in that it rewards you for being aggressive and making plays. It encourages you to dive, because it's also your escape tool, or you can just chain them together or whatever. This is just spam, and it promotes spam. And it's cool that you can get rewarded for timing it correctly. It just leads to a bunch of you just throwing them more haphazardly. It increases his area pressure. Doesn't really add an interesting decision. I guess you might save them for lower health enemies, but even if that's the case, shooting them is probably preferred. It's just a buff in a way that makes him more spammy, which I'm not a fan of. And this is fine. This makes him stronger in ults. I don't think the ult is that bad, but I can see why this would make it more appealing. I don't think it's quite goofy enough for me to put it in here. This is a little tough. It's not Y. Definitely not these two. It's almost a nothing burger. I like the idea of the burst change. It might be a little oppressive in terms of damage. I don't like the grenade spam. And I think the ult is like whatever. I'll probably put it in here. I think the core idea of rewarding good frag use is fine. And I think these two are like okay. Making him slightly tankier. This is weird. The thing I dislike is that the most interesting one to me is the perk that encourages the weaving back and forth between scoping and unscoping. And even that is like, it's not something that crazy or unique. So I don't know. I don't think any of these are egregious. Yeah. This is a nerf. You've straight up buffed everybody else and you nerfed one of the worst characters in the game. I think this the take aim changes in isolation are not terrible, in that Freja has had this really unfortunate balance where keeping her 2-shot potential, or borderline 2-shot potential at least, means that the rest of the character has to suck. I think that's not healthy. I don't think that fits in with the rest of the game, especially since there are already so many other characters that can do burst damage from long range. I think you could do more with the character. Offsetting that power into other aspects of her kit there's potential there. It's interesting. So this in isolation, I don't think is terrible. It's the same total damage, but you have the bleed effect, which is already in effect in the game. It gives supports a little bit more time to heal their teammates. It still fits with the character of like, oh, you gravely injured your bounty or whatever. I think that in isolation is fine. We know what I've said about the slows. I know bolus shot isn't like great, but you get it so often. This is... I just think slows feel bad, so I'm not a fan of that. And again, you eliminate people to get charge. And it's even more gimmicky because the base ability is just 3 kills, and that gives you a boost. This one is a specific player. If it's that Juno in the back who's impossible to hit, you're fucked. If it's the Mauga that's impossible to kill, you're fucked. Sometimes you'll high roll and you'll get over aggressive DPS or clueless support, and eventually you're probably gonna win a team fight. It's not like they're gonna live forever. This just makes the ability more inconsistent. Like this just makes the passive weirder and like kind of worse. Balancing around the passive is like her original passive has already been kind of a slippery slope. It's a little strange, but it fits with her character. I see what they're trying to do. This takes those problems and makes them worse. Like, this does not change anything. I get the idea of, oh, you give her a specific target to focus on. That adds to the narrative of the character. That makes each round unique, but it makes her more inconsistent. Like, this is just like a nerf across the board, except to her ultimate, which you make the crowd control better. I don't know. I'm between these two. It's not even goofy is the problem. Like, none of these changes are like fun. Hooking to teammates is fun. Flying a Sigma is fun. Throwing your axe is fun. This is dumb. Like, this is... I think this in isolation, if you either made her primary fire better, or you made her mobility do something else, But doing this, and then making her ult better, and making her passive to get the ult less consistent and worse. No. But, like, this is bad. Lifesteal on Dragon Blade, that's whatever. I think that's fine. Sort of similar. My thoughts on Emre's. Makes the ult better, but I can see why you would want to do that. This is weird. I don't like messing with the consistency of how objectives work. It just makes the game more confusing for like no reason. I get the funny back cap, haha, that's very quirky and cute, but it's just like a nothing burger. You just make the game less consistent. It's a buff technically, but I don't know. Deflected damage increases with distance. I think that's kind of fun. It rewards you for sniping enemies, but at the same time, we're talking about reducing consistency, and you're gonna see the rewards so little. I don't know. I don't think that's great, or rather, I think in a vacuum that's fine. I think it adds inconsistency that makes an ability a lot of people get confused by sometimes. Less coherence. But overall, I see what they're saying in that it helps against hit scan. The still counter to deflect is that you just don't shoot him, you wait it out. It's like, whatever. Giving him a damage boost, I think this is weird and unnecessary. Like, you already have that pick. You've already killed someone with it. I've said before, I don't like on Elim stuff. I think it happens so infrequently that it leads to these weird oscillations with the character that don't need to be there, that make it more confusing for a lot of people, and just make the character less consistent to play as, even when you're playing as them. So this is... I get wanting to reward it, but this I'm not a fan of. Canceling Blade, I think that's fine. If other ultimates can, like, Cage can be canceled, I think being able to cancel Blade is fine. No, you just make him have this other thing his ult can do. Again, Genji's a very well-designed character, so most of these being about his ult and like his goofy passives makes sense because there's not really a lot else to tweak. I'll probably put it in I kind of see it needs big changes. I don't think it's a nothing burger. I think giving the healing to him by default and this passive, I think that changes enough where, and especially the way Dragon Blade now works, it's essentially a different ultimate now. Adding some nuance to it, I think is fine. Adding some outplay potential, I think is fine. I'm a little concerned that it would be frustrating to play against in that someone's sound barriers or rallies, like you say, and then the Genji immediately cancels, gets rewarded with a projectile, and gets rewarded by having all their cooldowns reset. But at the same time, your support ultimate is still active, you can still fight against that, so I don't think it's terrible. Probably, I wouldn't say it's a strong idea. I'm not in love with any of these. I can see why someone might be, though. I really don't like this one. But I think it's fine, but would need pretty significant tweaks for me to be like confident or comfortable with these patch notes being in the base game. So you increase his damage per second by a lot. And I might be stupid. No, I'm not stupid. So you double his fire rate, essentially, by reducing recovery, and reduce his damage by... I can math good. You reduce his damage by 40. With the new fire rate, assuming he's shooting just flat twice as fast, he's dealing 45 more damage per second. He's dealing 170 per second. Obviously, assuming he hits all his shots. You also remove the one-shot potential by a lot. Hanzo has felt a little bit strange for the longest time in that he's kind of needed the one-shot to work, because if he hasn't had that, he's felt horrible to play as. I'm interested to see how it would work to make him more of a sustained DPS in this sense compared to what he is now. The thing that I worry about is that by doing this, attempting to do this, you just make him Ashe but worse, or Cassidy but worse. And I'm not sure if the rest of these changes marry with that. This is definitely, I would need to see how this plays. The buff to storm arrows, they can bounce twice. That's fine. There's some tech you could do with that, maybe. I don't think it would change the damage that much. It's like, fine. Giving him a jump up. Spaces, it has to be a really big jump up because it's spaces his wall climb can't get to. I can kind of see it in that he's just spamming from really hard to reach places. And then buffing Dragon Strike is like, fine, it's a bad hold, so. I definitely, I see the vision with these changes. You make him more vertical, you make him more consistent in dealing out damage, more of a pestering threat than a raw sniper type. You would have to maybe even increase his health if you're going to do this, if he's going to be more upfront. But I'm just spitballing. A lot of this would be based on how it feels to play. He's definitely, of a lot of the changes so far, I'd be interested to see how he feels. Because all my experiences with Hanzo have basically been like, have felt horrible if you're not hitting the headshots. So I think most of these are reasonable. I'm just a little unsure if this marries with the rest of his kit. So I would think I would put him here in that I get wanting to make him less feast or famine with the one shot, and I think one shots just feel bad. Getting one shot by Hanzo just feels bad. So I see what they're trying to do. I think the rest of his stuff is unoffensive. It is entirely possible it just feels ass, but that would also come down to some number tweaks. From a like thought perspective, from an idea perspective, I get why they did this. I can see how it could work. I can see how it could make Hanzo kind of interesting. Oh my goodness. Okay. From the top down, this is a rework. They've reworked Junkrat. I think Junkrat is a character that could deserve a rework. So I get that. Health reduced from 250 to 200. So he's one of the lowest health characters in the game now. So he's very squishy. Projectile speed increased, impact damage reduced, explosion damage reduced. Projectiles now detonate on impact. So easier to hit, easier to get directs, more of a dueling type. You can shoot at people's feet, technically. More like Pharah, and almost. I don't know if that's faster than Rocket, but let me actually check. Thank you. So it's faster than a Zen Orb. Deals 80 damage direct. So for a 250 hero, so 3 directs to put a 250 health hero at 10 health. Much easier to hit. The idea is to reduce spam. With that, you're less likely to shoot them at the ground or just an area. They detonate on impact. Okay, fine. 2 charges last for 6 seconds. This is weird. So I get that Steel Trap, it can be frustrating when you don't see it. And you want to make it a little bit more dynamic. 1 second to arm and lasts for 6 seconds. I think putting a timer on that is a little strange. I get you don't want rats to just set it up and park. Bleed and are revealed to Junkrat. This patch really likes revealing enemies, and they're slightly tankier. So you move up. It deals damage in an area. You could combo it with the frag launcher in the sense that you shoot, you mine, you shoot again. That would still work. You could use it as a finishing tool still. But you have to be right up close to do that. So your close range glass cannon is what Rat is now. This is weird. You have trap spam now. You're able to throw the traps really far away and they deal damage and bleed in an area. So you use that to like scout, and then you use the mine to reposition yourself, find an angle, and then you still spam, it's just slightly different. He does way less damage. So you really have to hit your shots to confirm kills. This is strange. I don't know what they're cooking fully. Definitely a character that could have benefited. It's not a nothing burger. I'm gonna put it here in that I understand wanting to make him less of a spam character. I think these changes would indeed make him a little less of a spam character. The trap changes are strange to me in that I don't really know how they would flow with the rest of his kit. Making mine a not thrown, I don't really like personally. I like the flavor of throwing concussion mine. How you can stick it to stuff, to surfaces, use it to displace enemies. I like that factor, because now it's just a mobility tool. You just you just got rid of the cool parts of concussion mine. I don't know. It just feels like you made him less tanky. You got rid of the cool parts of concussion mine. You made trap different. I don't know if this is better. It has a longer cooldown now too, so you can't I guess you can't spam these, but they bleed and are revealed to you. I don't know. I'm not fully feeling it. I don't think this really solves the problem with Rat. I think it just makes him tremendously different. This is another one that I really would have to get into and play extensively before I figured it out. But I don't know how I feel about this. I don't like that. I'm not a fan. This bothers me. I think you can make mine interesting and make Rat interesting without gutting two of his abilities. And even I agree trap is probably the thing that could be reworked the most about him. I just don't think this is the way, personally. Got rid of the stun lock. That's good. That perk is ass. That sucks. Make her longer range. The icicle slows enemies. Okay, I can see that. Slow is still a little cancer, but you make it with the harder to hit. But scaling the icicle, kind of like a Zen charge, Zen orb charge, I think is interesting. It does it. I agree with this. It adds another layer of skill expression. I kind of think these are really good changes. I really like all of these. And this is a character I really dislike playing against. Or rather, I should reframe it as, has a lot of toxic elements in her kit that make playing against her frustrating. But I think all of these have taken that in consideration, having completely gutted the character in any way. I think you'd have to watch for how powerful the charged icicles are, especially since they can headshot. I worry a little bit about that crossing too many one-shot thresholds. But overall, I think these changes make sense. I kind of like all of these, I'll be honest. If you're gonna keep the slowing, make it the skill shot, I agree. I'm fine with this. I think these are actually good. Alright, I don't even need to read. Let's improve Concussive Blast. Let's make Concussive Blast the old Orisa pool. It's bad because it's nothing. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change how the character plays. It's not really a noticeable improvement, I think. I don't think Concussive Blast is like that cancerous. Difficult to use? What? What do you mean? I don't agree with that at all. One of the easier parts of her kit, you made one part of Pharah's skill expression easier, I guess, in that it yanks everyone together, but yeah, no. It's not bad, it doesn't ruin the character. There was so little effort put into this that it's a nothing burger. It has to be. Okay, these are interesting changes. Making the soul orbs do something. If you're gonna keep that perk, which it should be removed, but if you're gonna keep that perk, making them boost Wraith form, I guess fits. Especially other characters can't see it, so it makes his timing a little bit confusing. But you can tell when the Reaper's gonna leave Wraith form, so it's not like too cancerous or too oppressive. I think it's fine. Adding a damage option to Wraith form can make it useful for kill confirms while keeping its other ability that it adds some choice in how you use it if you want to be aggressive. If you do chase after the kill with Wraith form, you're going to be exposed. I think the problem is adding automatic area damage to a character that can already teleport and already deal burst damage with the shotguns. Oh, that interaction could be... I'm just thinking in my head of a Reaper teleporting to the backline onto a Zen, let's say, hits one shot, misses another, goes into Wraith form anyways, stands by the Zen for like 2 seconds until they die, and then they have to leave. For the Zen, that's an incredibly frustrating interaction because you can't do anything about that. You can't do anything about the Wraith form. Reaper. So while it adds risk for them, just that an automatic AoE damage, especially if you can extend it, you can just go around and keep dealing damage. In an inconsistent way though, because it depends on how many people are dead. So these changes paired together, I see the concept. I'm not a fan. I think it's too frustrating having an invulnerable enemy that can deal damage in an area that already has high burst damage, so it's just very easy to finish people off with it. At risk to himself, so like from a balance perspective, I see why you would have that interaction. There is still a decision for the Reaper themselves to make, but as the person being attacked, you're just powerless. Even if the Reaper shows up and, you know, 2-taps you or whatever, you still have that split second to react. It's still part of like positional awareness and all that stuff. But allowing the Reaper to save themselves if they fuck up and still kill you is, I'm not a fan. I don't think that fits the flow of his gameplay. This is like fine, I think. You can cancel it. You can extend the duration by 1 second. That does make it significantly better. But Death Blossom is pretty bad. So I see why. I don't like on Elim stuff in general, but ultimates are supposed to be really powerful. I think buffing Death Blossom isn't going to be the worst thing in the world. Maybe you make Beyblade a little bit too powerful still. Or like any other buff to the Reaper. It could be kind of annoying, but I don't think in concept it's broken. And the ability to cancel ults, that's fine. I don't think that's a problem. Especially ults you channel. So it's not goofy. I'm going to put it. A lot of people are like, I kind of see it needs big changes. I see the intent, and I like the Death Blossom changes. I just don't like the Wraith form alterations. When the target dies with tracking dart on them, that's pretty rough because that's your most important ability. That's also pretty rough because you just insta-melt whoever you're against. This is just a buff. This is just a flattened buff that doesn't change how she plays at all. This, I think, making the flight better, moving that to base kit, you boost her mobility, I think that's fine. I think that's something that should be emphasized more. They purposefully avoided that because it would be cancerous. And you add it. Like, I get the risk-reward element. It matches with headshots, how taking a risk to get a headshot, you know, you can miss high versus body shots where there's more room for error. But just getting insta-melted, auto-aim insta-melted, because they hit one skill shot, that's rough. And you could say it's like Sojourn in a way. And Sojourn is a character that, and I know we can see her, hello, is a character that's frustrating for a lot of people because all of her value is in the one-shot potential. And doing this puts even more value in tracking shot and just bullet spam. And then this just makes it absurd that you can just chain them. I think in spirit, let's do goofy, but no. I think I understand why you would want to reward that. And I think getting the chain of shots would be satisfying. I don't think that solves the problems that the character is kind of boring and should be more mobility focused. I don't know. I'm not a fan. I'm going to say that's bad. Dual thrusters, so she gets 2 boosts. Now heals ally. I don't like that. I think it's... The game already has a little bit of a problem of support and DPS, their roles overlapping a little bit too much. Adding more healing to DPS in that they can heal others only makes that muddier. And I don't think it makes the game more interesting. So I'm not a fan of that. Is it the worst thing in the world? No. It encourages you to use disruptive shot, the deceleration field, whatever. A little bit differently, but I'm still not a fan. Second charge, that makes her much stronger, but whatever. Increased fire rate. Reduced damage fall off range. So it's, I assume the intent is you have to get closer. So I can see that they're trying to make her distinct from the other hit scan cal like type heroes and that she's encouraged to be more aggressive. This alone I think already helps. It allows her to take more aggro angles, do all this other stuff instead of just sitting in the back. I think the damage fall off would help. The charge shot would also help in that. So it's still reducing charge shot damage, still makes it a finishing tool. It's still a skill shot, but you make her a lot stronger at everything else. I think redistributing the power in that way is the right approach overall. You have to be a little wary of this in terms of balance, but I think giving her more mobility, making her health better, I think all of that contributes to subtly changing how people are going to play her. And I think that makes her a more aggressive character in a way that they seem to want. I don't think it's perfect necessarily. I think it would need testing. I mean, all of these do, but generally, like, I actually like what they're trying to do. I like the intent. I like moving that power away from just charge shot spam. So I'm going to say that's good. I agree. Top down. This is a meme. They made it. They're just doing. This is the most frustrating part of this patch, in that, like, you have legitimate reworks to a character people have had problems with since the game fucking launched. Like a genuine attempt to change how she plays into a more meaningful, different, interactive way. And then he has an AoE and he can push people. It's so annoying. Goofy, but no. It's not why. I think the ult change is like whatever, but make it more powerful, make it better than Sierra's ability. But no, I don't see how this would be used. You just make the healing better, I guess. You reduce just the clunkiness of placing it down and holding an angle, but this is not it. This is not it. I'm not a fan. They reworked Sombra again. I mean, it's better than what she currently has. It fits the fantasy more. I don't think this character will ever be solved in terms of being fun or interesting to play against, because she's invisible and turns your abilities off. And no matter how good or bad she is, she could be the worst character in the game. And that still doesn't change the negative emotional impact of just not being able to play your character, or not seeing where the enemy is and they just appear in front of you. I will say though, I think like trying to be more serious about this, I guess. I think splitting translator and stealth makes sense. Making virus into hack, kind of mirroring those things. I get that. You make it a longer cooldown, so you really have to get that burst right. It's a skill shot, so it's not just hacking the boop boop boop, you just do it automatically. You actually have to fucking hit people. It takes you out of stealth, obviously. You still have the get out of jail for free card with Translocator. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that could be annoying to deal with. But overall, I see the intent. I understand what they're trying to do. It's almost like Echo in a way, where you have the movement option and then all-in like damage ability that you can get out with. I'm gonna say strong idea. Tweak. Not something I'm in love with, but I like the concept. I like what they're trying to do with it. Not a lot. Giga buff teleporter by providing shield to teammates to stand around it. Unfortunately, I think what this is gonna cause is people are just gonna group by the teleporter and still not take it. But I understand the intent. It's like whatever. I think that's kind of fun. It's not a nothing burger change. I see that in terms of, they want to emphasize the playmaking aspect of Symmetra. I understand that, and I think that's fine. I think making any major perk base kit has some risks in terms of making things toxic. Having everyone group up around the teleporter to protect it. Oh god, I'm imagining like a Rein or like an Orisa just standing in front of the teleporter and getting the health from it and protecting it. I waggle my finger at myself and I say the counterplay, the counter example to that is that it's on cooldown, so it's not like you just get that health for free, I guess, but I think it's a little bit too strong, just that providing AoE shielding like that. But again, it's not like it's an absurd amount. I don't know. This is fun. This is cute. Makes it slightly better without being oppressive, especially since you can kill them midair. I'm almost tempted to put this in Nothing Burger, because I think Sim is a character that you could still do a lot with, and I don't really know if this you make the major perk her base kit. So you gave her something she already has and made it base kit. Gave her a slightly different major perk and then added like a cute little feature. You basically didn't change her. So I'm gonna put it in nothing. Like, this doesn't change how I feel about Sim really. It's fine. Wow, they So I assume the rockets deal more damage. In theory, what this does is it makes turrets slightly less frustrating, because you can tell where the damage is coming from easier, because it's like a traceable rocket. You can see the path where it comes from, and you can interact with it via shield or eating it or whatever else. And if it dealt more damage, you can technically, the rest of the team, Torbjorn's team, could capitalize on what it creates. It's possible it just never hits anything, especially because it's always going to be firing at like moving targets. I imagine that's part of the reason why it was bullets in the first place. At the same time, I can see why you would do rockets. It's fine. You make him hit scan during overload, sure. Again, in a patch where they rework one of the problem characters of the game and completely change how she plays. They're like, Torb gets rockets and hit scans it. To Nothing Burger. It doesn't do anything. I'm almost tempted to skip this because Tracer is probably the best, like singular best designed character in the game. So these are gonna be gimmicks. So I'm fine with this being weird. Health packs into ult charge. Okay, that's really kind of cancerous. I don't like that. Actually, I really don't like that. That's also annoying and unpredictable. So it deals way more damage after 3 seconds, but you can get rid of it. In theory, it's more lethal, but you can interact with it more. I don't hate that concept. I think Pulse is fine the way it is, but I don't think that would be awful in terms of like, oh shit, we have half a second to do something, but it's more dangerous if you don't do anything. It is completely reliant on teammates, but it's already like a near insta kill. So I don't know. I think in concept these are fine in terms of making pulse a little harder to consistently do, and there's more counterplay, but more rewarding if you do land it. I don't hate that. I think that is cancerous, and I think this is kind of weird and dumb. Giving teammates the ability to instantly recall, no, I can't get behind that. Goofy, but no. Not quite why, because I will give them some slack with how do you fix Tracer. You can't, because she's perfect. So they nerfed her. It doesn't last as long. Her defense doesn't last as long, but it's a Genji deflect. So there's that. Pulls enemies in, and they said you can set up teammates. I don't hate that. Targeting indicator is visible, similar to like Hazard's ult, in that you can see it for like half a second. I think that's fine. I think the ult changes are whatever. But they just nerfed her. Like, they made her worse for a Genji deflect and pulling enemies in. I don't know why they did that. This solves none of the problems with the character. It makes her even more feast or famine, because so much of the value is being tied up in whirlwind dash now. This is really bad. Okay, so they gave Venture the Genji dash ability. I don't hate that. I think that makes sense for them. I think that makes sense for their play style. It's a minor perk, that's fine. Make them deal more damage. You get more dashes more frequently, but they're just a mobility tool base. They're not really a combo. Oh, this is just a nerf, actually. Like, even if you use both of them together and you're in front of your opponents, that's 70 damage. There's 20 less damage. I think the idea is that the overall combo is the same. 85, 85. And then you use both of these and you get them back faster. So I can kind of see that. Knockback strength. I don't know how I feel about that. Yes, it disrupts enemies more, and it can make you a little bit of a nuisance. However, it also pushes them further away from you, which combined with the horizontal decrease can make it harder for you to close the distance. So you're just going to be shooting more, and you have way less survivability in general. So you've exchanged the niche of Venture being their slight tankiness with the shields in exchange for more dashes. I don't think this is like bad. I see the vision. I'm curious how it would play. I also am not sure if they fixed like a real... I get that Venture is kind of one-dimensional and that it's sort of the same combo over and over again. Like, I think you could just do this or something like this, where if you get a final blow, you decrease the cooldown of drill dash, and it would do a lot to reward Ventures for being aggressive. I don't know how I feel about this. In terms of their goal, it does provide some flexibility. The damage output is roughly the same. You just have to use your dash more instead of the other aspects of their kit. I don't hate it. It's interesting. I'll put it here. Strong idea, needs tweaks. If you wanted to go that direction with a character, I think you could. I think there's a viable path, but I don't know if that's that big of a problem with the character right now. I think you might feel a little bit worse not having that oomph from the drill dash, not being able to be that kind of brawly, you stay in the fight long enough to get that melee going, but reducing their HP, reducing the bonus shields, you don't really get that. You essentially increase the risk substantially for the reward of a little bit more flexibility. I don't know how I feel about that, but I do think that is a viable design direction for the character if you wanted to. That's kind of goofy and dumb. So she scopes in really slow, but her primary fire deals more damage. She's a little more mobile. God, that just makes getting headshot feel even worse. And you made Venomine way stronger. So I see the attempt is to shift Widow away from just sitting in the backline doing nothing. And she's a very toxic character. So I understand the intent here. So I get what they're trying to do here. I get shifting Widow's power away from her scope. Getting one shot by her still feels bad. The maps Widows are good on still feel bad. I don't know if that really changes that meaningfully. You encourage her to move around more, you encourage her to use her primary fire more. You shift, again, like distribute that power to the rest of her kit. I think that's a good thing, but I think the rest of it feels a little gimmicky. I'm gonna say, I kind of see it. I think it would need a lot of changes for me to be fully on board. Holy shit, this is awesome. But I see the vision. All these passive changes, I don't like. I've already said I dislike messing with how objective works. It adds unnecessary inconsistency. I don't think this justification of slightly changing the mindset of the player, I'm not a fan. This is really bad. A global effect per hero class that stacks is awful. It's just a flat number buff for everybody. It makes certain characters too strong with one another. I think from a design perspective, any global effect from one character, it doesn't fit with the game. It doesn't fit with what we're doing. So I'm not a fan of that at all. And then arguably the worst one is this. Bonus maximum health for surviving encourages those characters to play passively to get that maximum health. It feels like a gimmick. I'm not a fan of stuff that stacks over time, of like passive numbers that go up over time in terms of Overwatch, because the general pace of rounds is so quick and there's so much you have to consider on a moment-to-moment basis. I think adding that kind of number overhead, one, adds a layer of complexity that doesn't really impact the enjoyment of the game, and two, in a case like this, just completely undermines the other skillful aspects. Like, what is this? And I get it resets on death. It fits the theme of the characters, I suppose. But this is a bit. This is a quirky, funny, haha bit. So I'm not a fan of any of these changes. I understand wanting to change the passives to make them more interesting, but this ain't it. You know where this is going. We've completely lost the plot. We've completely gone for silliness, which I don't mind. I don't mind whimsy, I don't mind joy, I don't mind happiness, I don't mind funny characters, I don't mind funny patches. Overwatch has done April Fool's patches or unique patches designed just for silly goofiness. This has been presented as a legitimate attempt to change how the game feels. And in terms of providing interesting insight for potential changes for the characters, how they might interact with the game in a different way, how they can be tweaked slightly, how we can shift their designs a little bit to change how players approach things, this completely fails. You offset the one weakness of the character to such an absurd degree that you just completely throw everything out that makes Ana fit within the ecosystem of the game. Removing the cast time on Nano it makes it snappier, I guess, but you're just making it ever so slightly more mindless. Same with Biotic Grenade, you make it ever so slightly more mindless in that you can detonate it midair. The only one I kind of like is the Biotic Rifle, and even then it's maybe puts too much emphasis on the player's aim. But I'm talking out of my butt there. Ana is an aim-centric character, so crit healing, the burst healing might be a little bit too much, but I can see why you would want to do that. It's fine. Ana's a well-designed character in general, so I understand that these changes are just extra little bits to play around with. She doesn't need a lot of improving. But man, this is rough. This isn't even an interesting idea, because it's just, oh, she can fly. And that's so quirky. That's so funny. I'm not a fan. Now, this is a dramatic change in a way that I actually don't hate. Immortality Field has always struggled with the fact that its super long cooldown makes you too scared to use it almost. But when you do use it effectively, the other team gets incredibly frustrated because it robs you of kills. It is a weird part of his kit. Making it an ultimate that's a big old AoE boost heal, I don't think is a terrible idea. Especially because all his other stuff synergizes with it. Same with making Amp Matrix his secondary ability. It's a little window, it encourages him to be DPS BAP a little bit. You can be selfless with it if you want to. It does have a long cooldown. So I can see the vision there. I don't know how I feel about that. The homing makes it easier to land. It reduces some of the skill floor. It lowers the skill floor, I should say. I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. More so quality of life, it's fine. But this is an experiment that I'd actually be interested to see how it would play out. I think the problem is that Amp Matrix is an interesting ultimate, and you don't make it an ultimate anymore. So it's still like kind of cool as an ability, but we just get another AoE save everybody support ult. And that also doesn't affect how regen burst kind of sucks. Oh, like everything about Bap is bad, except his gun, his weapon, and the little jump he gets. So I think anything you can do to make him more interesting is welcome. I'm gonna put this, I'm not crazy about it in the sense I think it's incredible, but I do think genuinely there is enough here that you could make like a solid attempt to make it into the game. You just give her more mobility, the whip shot, the midair dash. This is nonsense. This is meme nonsense. Okay, so the rally change is like awful. Like this is dumb. This, I don't know how else to describe it. I'm not a fan. I get wanting to give Brig some mobility to close the distance. The way she functions right now as more of a bodyguard character can be frustrating against very like poke heavy comps. I can see that. I think it does a good enough job with whip shot being such a low cooldown and long enough range where you can still apply pressure, I guess. She's very much a wait for things to come to me character. So I can see why you'd want maybe one of these to be put in place. I think having both emphasizes the mobility a little too much. Makes her like a dive character. While that's fine for someone like Lucio or Juno, where that is their kit, that is like the thing that makes them good, putting too much emphasis on a character that already has health, that already has the ability to deal damage in close range with the shield bash, that has the ability to heal herself, that has, you know, a shield. I think that weirdly makes her too versatile. I think you risk making her good at everything if she can just close the gap, like you say. So I see the vision a little bit. I think making whip shot a little jump is kind of dumb. I think that making the shield bash, I don't know, move up ever so slightly wouldn't be the worst. So I see what you're trying to do in terms of allowing her to apply some ranged pressure. I just don't know if making her hypermobile is the solution, especially with how good she is at other things. So I don't think it's a... I'm going to say I kind of see it. I kind of see what you're trying to do, but for the most part, you'd need significant changes for me to actually be like okay with it being in the game. Like you'd need to change Brig by a lot. She's lore accurate, so it provides healing to allies. You just make her heal better. No. Goofy, but no. This just changes very little about the character. You just make her better. It's just a buff. Outburst is already a damage, escape, and mobility tool, and then you also make it a healing ability. That puts a lot of power into it. Illari's whole design, and arguably problem, is that so much of her support, her healing, is tied into that pylon, and the rest of her kit is balanced around her just dealing good poke damage. And that is boring. That is boring to play as, that's boring to play against. There's very little nuance to the character. I don't think this outburst change adds that much nuance. There's some with, do I use the ability to heal my teammates? But you have the right click, you have the pylon. I don't know when you would ever use that to heal your teammates instead. And if you do, you're still gonna be shooting people with your rifle most of the time. The gameplay loop is very similar. You just go to your teammates, press shift to get back to where you were. I don't know. I don't see that as meaningfully changing how she plays. It doesn't fix any of the problems with her. And then this is like a bit. This is, oh, you're looking at the sun. Her ult is already good. I will say, I think the idea of some status effects applying to enemies aiming at you is interesting. I think there's some potential there. But in this instance, it would just be very frustrating and annoying in a way that is not, like, satisfying. So I'd put her there. I'm not a fan of any of these. The perk makes her super damage oriented, just super aggro, which is fine. You say it leans into the sun power, but this kind of does with, like, oh, she's bright, and then you get a major perk that makes her all fiery. Jetpack Cat. Again, funny haha patch is fine, but when this is billed as like a legitimate attempt to rework these characters a little bit, you can't have both. You can't do both. And you can't do both. You're sending mixed messages. This is admittedly fun. I'm not going to say it's not. I'm not going to say it's not a fun idea, but incredibly cancerous. This perk in isolation, I don't think is awful. You sacrifice a lot, but you get a lot. It could make her very annoying, but I think making her super squishy in return isn't the worst. I don't hate that in isolation. Giving Lifeline a duration, I think also makes sense. I think that's something a lot of people have talked about as a legitimate change for her. This is dumb. You just make her... I don't like that. I think Catnapper is fine. That might be a hot take. I think Catnapper is okay as an ult. It's arguably kind of bad, you could argue. You have to time it right. You don't always have environments to drop people off. You can be stunned out of it or killed out of it or whatever. So this is like a meme change. A weird, like, I don't want to say dumbing down, but you take an interesting ult and you just make it a heal and damage Moira just bleh. And then you have something interesting with the Zoomies ability, and then like a genuinely like okay change. So I don't know. I'll put it in goofy, but no. In that, I mean, it's not that bad. It's not as, I think these are like egregious. This is really bad. It's not as egregious as those, but I can't justify this. I don't like balance. This is a little late to say this. I don't like balancing around perks. I think you could be more creative with how you change the hero in terms of their base kit. Balancing around perks is playing it extremely safe, but I can see why they would do it. So it goes further and creates a slow, gives it an additional use. Like I said, makes her a little more distinct from Lucio. I can see that. I think speed ring is fine. I think Juno's pretty well designed in general. But I can see an option to make it more aggressive is like, okay. Orbital Ray I'm torn on because making it a big old damage laser is dumb. I'm not a fan of that. I do like making it move towards the Juno instead of going in a straight line. I think that allows for some creativity. It makes it more distinct than the other just place once and go support ults. But so little has happened. You added a perk that slightly changes the ring, and you're dealing damage. I'm probably gonna put it here. Actually, in reality, it should be here. This changes so little about her kit. The ult dealing damage is just, it makes it better. It changes the use cases a little bit. But again, and I've said this before, I don't like the ultimate changes too much. If you could get rid of this and keep this, that's something I would want in the game. Just full stop. But this, the damage makes it a little bit strange. And there's not a lot going on, so I think I have to put her in Nothing Burger for now. This is dumb. This is stupid. This is... Nope. 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 No. 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 Nope. 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 Kiri is not well designed and is a little too good at everything. However, the solution is not gutting the thing that makes her interesting in the skirmish potential in the kunai, the high skill ceiling in the kunai. Just swapping them making the kunai heal, making the Ofuda deal damage. It just makes her more like everyone else. I don't like that change at all. I don't like making, and Suzu's an ability I don't like in the base game. I think Suzu is very frustrating to deal with in the base game. Adding knockback to it, I don't know. Like, she's more close range, I guess. She's more consistent instead of burst damage, but this is a really strange change. I'm not feeling this at all. I don't like this at all. So he deals more damage, reduced reload time, makes him more of a constant presence. I think this is actually like a slight little quality of life that I like. It makes it a little less consistent, but I don't think, it makes it a little less predictable for enemies, but allowing each ally to use it, giving them that agency, I think over time would make people stand on pedals a lot more, and I think play into the utility of Lifeweaver. So I actually like that a lot. I don't mind making him a little bit more offensive, give him a little more oomph. This is bad though. This is adding cooldown adjustments to the ult. I cannot get behind that. We already have an ultimate that does that with Kiriko's ultimate, and that's one of the best, if not the best ultimate in the whole game. So adding that to Tree, I don't connect with that. How much do we want to weigh that one change though? I think it's up to you. The rest of these I think are fine, or at least interesting to the point they're worth exploring, but the Tree change I don't like. So it's not, I'll be nice. I'll put it here in that I don't think it's fundamentally broken. I think these really smooth out some of the more frustrating parts of him, but this is bad. Actually, I'm gonna move him down. I don't think anyone in the tiers above has anything that egregious. This is bullshit. That is dumb. Messing with objectives is dumb. You should not be able to mess with objectives. They should be consistent for everybody no matter what. This makes Lucio the best support on every single map that has one of these. No matter what, he's the best, because you have to win less fights to progress further. You can be worse and do as good, if not better, because the payload or the robot or whatever else will move further. That's horrific. That is disgusting. Like, the rest of these don't matter. Holding the ability to hold the boop is fine, whatever. It adds some choice in terms of how you want to use it. You nerf overhealth to Lucio in exchange for not consuming the ult until it completely goes. Actually, I don't like that either. I think the difference between cancelable DPS ults and this is that the DPS ults, like when you cancel it, you sacrifice your usage of it, and you're almost always in a really bad spot. Like, you can still be countered even with the ultimate out. So canceling it is a choice. I think canceling this in situations you would cancel sound barrier are just ones where you would naturally be punished. So excuse me, I'm talking too much for the actual reason. The actual reason is you keep the fucking ultimate if you cancel it. So you don't actually risk anything. That's no. You keep the ultimate if people interrupt you. No. You can't. Removing counterplay for just cause like, oh, well, it feels bad because I die when I cast beat at a stupid. No, that's horrible. That might be the worst one. Lucio might be the worst for the overall just feel of the game. Yeah, like the boop build-up is fine. The other two are horrific, like genuinely awful changes. And sound barrier has a little less effect, but these are memes. We're having a laugh. We're fixing nothing about the character. Make one of the most toxic abilities more toxic. It's easier, so you reduce the risk for mercy. You can be more brain dead. I don't mean to be that bitchy about it, but one of the key counterbalances to res is that it takes a long time and you have to be exposed to do it, or you have to win the fight beforehand and have space to do it. And even then it's toxic, but No, that's bad. This is just a meme. You fly into enemies and you die instantly, or you fly into enemies and you fly out and you deal a little bit of damage. These are both nothing. These are nothing. They don't fix anything wrong with the character. They don't push the character in an interesting new direction. I don't hate that as a minor perk in terms of you reduce the overall team healing you can get, but you get more charges, and per team member it's better. I don't think that's terrible. That's a good quality of life change. That is interesting. It kind of plays into the ambush style a little bit, gives you a little bit more choice in what you're doing moment to moment. It also doesn't increase damage too much. I mean, pierce enemies, that could be, with certain comps, that could be pretty brutal. I don't know about that, honestly. But the rest of it is like, I don't think Mizuki's problem is mobility. I don't know how I feel about that. The ability to cancel it early, I can see. If you miss your chain and you hit a wall, you can still cancel it. I don't hate the idea of using the chain as a mobility tool, and you have that mix of like, do I use it offensively or do I use it defensively to get out of a sticky situation? Problem is he already has another mobility option, which means I think a lot of the time you would end up just using it normally. Would mostly be used for like getting to high ground before the fight, which isn't the worst idea. I'm not sure if that's something he needs. I don't know if that fits the way the rest of his kit works. Obviously with this charge glaive, it's easier to hit people from distance. I don't hate it. I dislike that. I think you should be able to see it. I think that adds to some predictability. Yeah, I think just making it so he instantly teleports out and there's no way to figure out where he went. Most of the time, the way you use it, they're not going to be by the doll anyways. I don't like that change. Healing allies is fine. Gives it more uses. It's like whatever. I don't mind that. So some quality of life stuff, some interesting stuff. I actually think giving him verticality is not like awful, but I don't know how much you would actually use it. That's an insane statement. Of course you would use it. I don't know how much it fits in with the way the rest of his kit works, especially with how much it relies on playing around teammates and building aura and doing that stuff. So a little bit incongruent, like I'm not sure how it quite aligns, because a lot of like Kiri, for example, her abilities allow her to take really aggressive angles and pester and pester and pester, and when she's pressured, she can disengage pretty easily. So yeah, I don't hate it. I think they actually tried. There's some ideas here that are interesting, but it would need a lot of changes before I felt good about it. Longer healing range, orb moves when Moira turns. This, fine. It allows you to play outside of range a little bit more. It allows you to be more aggressive. It takes less time to return to your teammates because you can heal them from further away. Fine. This I think is actually kind of cool. It adds some skill expression to her abilities, to the way it works, especially the damage orb. I think it plays into the I don't have to aim too hard appeal of the character while also being a form of skill expression. So I think that's cool. Making the ultimate just another ability is dumb. I don't agree with that. I don't think that would, like, Coalescence is kind of a boring ult, but I think a lot of Moira's problems are the other parts of her kit. Making Coalescence an ability that you can cancel, that feels a little strange. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think people would just spam it until the soonest you can cancel it, and then you'd always have it in your back pocket. I know if you die, you lose it, so obviously there's some risk. You don't get the full benefit of it. There's some like ways to play around it, but I think changing how ultimates work for this specific character, no, I don't think you should do that. So because of that, I'm going to put her in I can kind of see it. I think two of those changes are strong, or at least interesting, but that ultimate change I cannot get behind. All right, Wu Yang. So a perk that makes the wave better, fine. Orbs are visible through walls. It's a quality of life thing. I think it removes some of the skill expression is just predicting, just hoping, just guessing. And I think that removes some of that, like I said, some of that skill expression from the character. So I don't know. I'm not a huge fan, but it also is not like an egregious change or anything crazy. And then extinguishing burning is fine. It's intuitive, it makes sense. I think making it a cleanse for that specific ability is not so crazy or like hard to understand. It's because it's fucking water. It's a wave of water. So I don't think that's terrible. Overall, though, like, this goes very firmly. I'm very glad I made this category in the nothing burger. Like, this is not a Wu Yang change. This doesn't change how the character functions in any way, unless that perk is insane, which it might be, but it's like, whatever, it's fine. Orb of Harmony enables Zen to move 50% faster, but prevents some actions. His orbs now heal and damage, like Juno, like Ana, like all those guys. Secondary fire can only damage enemies, so that's a little bit of inconsistency. This feels a lot like shuffling the chairs around. You make him more like all the other supports, which does make him more consistent, I suppose. Again, Zen is a character I think is mostly fine. In this reimagining, though, I don't hate the idea of translating the healing to his primary fire. You make it... The Orb of Destruction especially is more of a skill check, is a little harder to use. You add a slow and a 12-second cooldown for 4... Okay, so you just nerf Discord Orb, like, a lot. Adding a slow is gross. It is a skill shot, so it's not like the worst thing in the world. I don't hate these ideas in terms of if we had to rework Zen and make him more in line with the modern roster. The simplicity of Zen, the idea behind Zen, is that his abilities are simple to use and always active to allow you to focus almost entirely on your own positioning and aim, because he's a damage character essentially, and you removed a lot of that from him by adding the ammo management and now knowing when to use your Orb of Discord and all of that. It's not insane. It seems like Orb of Harmony is still something that is just passively placed. Like, it doesn't destroy the character or anything. I think it would be interesting, especially, like, I don't hate the idea of giving attack and movement boost. I think having that as a playmaking option is fine. I think making Discord more of a skill shot is interesting. The inconsistency of secondary and primary fire bothers me, but I understand why you'd want to do it. I'll put it at, I kind of see it, but you need big changes. You would need to do a lot for me to feel good. You need to do a lot for me to feel good about them doing that, because I think Zen is fine. But I see what you're trying to do, and I respect it, is what I'll say. And Xion obviously is new, so she was not in this list. So overall, I think it's cool that Blizzard did this. I'd like to see more events with different people to get their takes on it, get their takes on hero designs. It could be as simple or complex as you want. It could maybe even play with objectives and how maps work. I don't know how free they'd be able to do that. I think the frustrating part about this is that it oscillates between just a complete meme and legitimate attempts to rework characters. So it makes evaluating those legitimate attempts more difficult because it's saddled with all this, like, nonsense. I think it's a bad... Like, if they, from a perspective of these are changes we are implementing, it would be really bad for the health of the game, I think. As an experiment, I think it's cool. I think it's interesting, but I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the changes.